Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf with your hosts, Denise Russo and Samantha Powell.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is a life and leadership podcast where we're exploring the lessons that we're learning through the books on our shelves. We're exploring a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a #1 best-selling book. And right now we're about halfway through the book. My name's Denise Russo, and I'm excited to once again be here with my friend Sam Powell. Sam, it's great to have you here today.
No, I'm super excited to be here. This is going to be the last episode of the second law. So if you've been following along with us, the first law was make it obvious. The second law was make it attractive. And we are on chapter 10 of the book, which is the last part of the make it attractive law. And today we're going to be talking about how to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. I don't know about you, Denise. You have any bad habits? I have none at all.
I don't know, but what suddenly came to my mind is there's a song about this. Like, I'm not going to attempt to sing it at all, but it's a song about bad habits. And it's a fun song. It's a catchy song. It makes you want to dance to it, but it's all around breaking bad habits. So I'm looking forward to finding and fixing not just the habits, but the causes of these habits. So curious what you think about this chapter and how we're going to go through our day together.
Yeah, I'm excited. So we're going to talk about where cravings come from. We're going to talk about how to reprogram your brain to enjoy them. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll be able to look at some of the bad habits in your life and think about how to maybe find them and fix them a little bit so you can become the person that you want to become. So this chapter starts out with smoking, a story about smoking, which I think most of us at this point probably know is a bad habit. And James tells this really interesting story about a man and how he, kind of smoked socially and was around these people who were, kind of smoking in a group. And I went to college. I watched plenty of people who never smoked until they drank and then they smoked. And you're like, well, these associations and this like environment, all of a sudden they're doing this thing that like is just not who they are, right, at all. And so it's really trying to dive deep and understand where does that habit come from. And so James kicks us off here in the where cravings come from in the idea that every behavior has a surface level craving and a deeper underlying motive, right? So there's a reason, there's this kind of biological, really deep down to the core of who we are, reason for the thing that we're craving, right? And the thing that we're doing. And so when you really understand a bad habit, you have to understand that deeper level. What do you think about that, Denise?
I find it super fascinating because there's some statistics that say that smoking is a $54 billion annual industry. And you made a quick point that people know it's a bad habit. So when you know it's bad, what is it that attracts you to put that stick in your mouth, knowing that there's no health benefit whatsoever that comes from it? And when you couple it with drinking on top of that, you said some people, will only smoke if they're also drinking. It seems to be this mental burden. And James talks about in the book that there was another book called Alan Carr's Easy Way to Stop Smoking. And there was this guy who had been a smoker for a long time. And he read that book. And suddenly, even if he was around friends that were smoking, he realized that he didn't need to smoke. And so we talked last week about the influence of family and friends on our habits. And this is saying to me that there is an influence of the people you care about, even on your bad habits. I'll give an example. I not long ago was trying to have a healthy habit of eating no sugar. Well, my husband loves Dairy Queen. And so he would come to after dinner and say, hey, let's go to Dairy Queen. And it's so hard to just say, okay, I won't go to Dairy Queen. That's fine. That's easy to break that habit by saying, I'm going to stay home. You go get the ice cream, come back when you're done. But then he said, well, let's just go for a ride. The weather's nice. We'll put the top down on the car. We live in Florida, so we have a convertible. And so then I thought, well, gosh, the craving is I really do want to take a nice ride in the car. Can I resist going through the drive-through at Dairy Queen and not having any ice cream. And sure enough, I was able to do it. It felt hard at first, but then I thought to myself, everything that James said is, why do you really need that thing that you really don't need? You just created a habit that said, it's hot, it's Florida, go get ice cream after dinner. He talks about things that are good for you. He says in the book that you think you're quitting something, but you're not quitting anything because cigarettes do nothing for you, or in this case, ice cream does nothing good for you. You think smoking is something you need to do to be social, but it's not. You can be social without smoking at all. You can actually ride in a convertible and not eat ice cream. You think smoking is about relieving stress, but it's not. Smoking does not relieve your nerves. It actually destroys them. To me, that was super powerful. I've never been a smoker. My mom used to smoke when I was little. In fact, I remember she took a picture of me when I was, oh gosh, I must have only been probably 5 years old. And it was probably she'd get in a lot of trouble if she posted that picture today, because it was a picture of me holding her cigarette. And so for years later, she quit smoking when my brother was young in middle school. He used to draw pictures of my mom with black lungs and guilt her to death on her bad habits. And that's why she stopped smoking. But just recently we went to a candy store. I know, no sugar. And I do good. I can go into the candy store now and not buy anything. But Olivia bought my mom this little packet of like fake cigarettes, sugar cigarettes. So now she just gives my mom these fake cigarettes. My mom hasn't smoked now for probably, I don't know, 60 years. It's been a long time since she stopped smoking. But it's funny to think about, well, I guess not that long. My brother's not that old. Let's say she hasn't smoked for at least 40 years. But the point is that habit is still there. Like she could still hold the candy the way she would have held a cigarette 40 years ago. And it's just kind of funny now, but it's about behavior change and making something unattractive. And it's hard because I think, Sam, sometimes you could easily say, like in this case of no sugar, well, then I just won't have sugar in my house. Well, the reality is you can do that in a controlled environment. But what happens when you're in an environment that's not controlled, like your friends that are maybe out at a bar or at a party? Like, how do you help yourself break bad habits when you're in an environment with people you like and where you feel driven by peer pressure?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what James is really talking about here is, right, when all these things happen, right, because you can't avoid the stimulus forever, most likely, right? Like something's going to come up, something's going to happen. But what you really have to understand is this deep, deep programming we have inside of ourselves that drives that thing, right? Like, let's take your sugar story for an example, right? At your very, very, very core, your body wants food and nutrition, and it needs that stuff, right? And so that's what you're like, these examples from the cigarette example, right? Is like, you think quitting smoking is something, smoking is something you need to do to be social, but it's not. You can be social without smoking at all, right? It's that deep-seated need. If you dig way down deep, I'm smoking because I want to fit in with the group, because I need relationships. I need community in order to survive, right? Like, go back to our hunting and gathering days. You didn't survive all by yourself. You got eaten by a lion, right? So you need that community. So if you really, really dig down deep and understand, like, hey, the sugar is because I need food to survive. I cannot make it through my life without eating. But then once you really understand what that core need is, then you can have that debate with yourself that says, I can actually be social without smoking. I can actually be filled with nutrition without eating the sugar, right? There are other options for me, right? There's fruits that are the non-refined sugar, right? So there's other options, but you really have to get down and understand that core need is something hardwired into who we are as being people, right? And as being humans. And then really, then from there, you've got an ability to fight it. And James brings a really interesting example about social media and about, he says that look at nearly any product that's habit forming, and you'll see that it does not create a new motivation, but rather it latches on to the underlying motives of human nature. And then he goes on to give some interesting examples, right? Like find love and reproduce. That's basic human nature. You need that connection, and there's this desire to reproduce. So we use Tinder, right? I swipe right. There's so many options of people I could find as a partner here. And so I just swipe, and it's not creating this new desire in you. It's latching onto one that you've got really deep seated.
That's so interesting to think about, because I think a lot of it has to do with, again, we talked about last time, chemicals in our body and what our body craves. And so I was thinking, when people are pregnant, for example, and they crave some weird food, it's actually not that they're craving that food. It's something about that food, whether it's a vitamin from that food or a flavor in the food or the texture of that food, that is supplying the craving. And what James Clear says is that a craving is a manifestation, a specific manifestation of a deeper underlying motive. So the key is to first figure out what is the motive, because he also says that your current habits are not necessarily the best way to solve problems you face. They're just the methods you learned to use. So if you crave pickles, you'll eat pickles. Well, what if what all you really are craving is something salty because your body is missing whatever the vitamin is that supplies that when you're pregnant? Or for me, a current habit that I have that doesn't solve problems I'm facing is that I have a door finally on my office. And for years I lived in a house where I didn't have a door. Now that I have the door, I can easily close it, but it closes off what's behind the door, which is usually laundry and dishes and mess. And so my habit that's not the best way to solve the problem I face is that I go into my office and I close the door. So I don't face what's behind the door on the other side. And then I end up overworking. And I find myself sitting for hours and hours instead of exercising, instead of going outside and getting fresh air, instead of eating healthy things. Because habits, as James says, are about association. Your brain is continually absorbing information and noticing cues in your environment. And every time you perceive a cue, your brain runs a simulation. It makes a prediction about what you should do next. And for me, that's definitely a habit that I want to break. That's something I consciously know about. But as we've been learning, if something's attractive and obvious, it's really hard to break those habits.
Yeah. And what you're saying, right? This simulation that your brain is running, right? He says that life feels reactive, but it's actually predictive, right? Our reaction is actually an action taken off of a predictive, chain of events that your brain ran in its head, right? Like fight, people who like flight or fight or freeze or fawn, right? There's 4 of those things, actually. It's not just flight or fright or fight or whatever. It's not just the 2 options. That it's not a reaction. It is, right? We use the word reaction, but it's actually your body's response to predicting what's happening. Threat is coming at you. The right response for me is insert one of the 4 here, right? And that's programmed in you from your history and, your past experience to figure out what that response, what that response really is and should be according to all the subconscious, calculations your supercomputer brain is really making.
It gets me thinking about, I've been coaching a lot of clients lately who are unhappy at their jobs. And one of the things that I often ask them is, are you running away from something, or are you running towards something when you're looking for your new job? Are you just trying to get away from pain? And no matter where you go, you think the pain will be gone? Or are you finding something exciting and interesting and engaging and enlightening that you want to run toward? Because you could get away from the bad habit, but if you're running away from it, there's typically, it seems that people run toward the same thing. They just want a different package on the wrapper. So, you may be at a company like a certain industry. Well, then why are you looking for the same job title at the same industry with a competitor? Is it because the culture is different and you like their leaders better, or you like the way that company's products work better? Or do you just want the sameness, but you're just afraid of leaving where you are and going somewhere different?
Yeah, right. And James says that the cause of your habits is actually the prediction that precedes them, right? And so really understanding, why am I taking the action that I'm doing? you really have to understand that it's coming from whatever happened right before, right? Like you go and apply to that same job that you hated because it feels safe and easy. It's the path of least resistance, right? Like that's what habits are at the end of the day, right? They're the path of least resistance to fulfill this craving that we have, right? And this reason that we have it, right? I reach for a bag of potato chips because I'm deficient in the vitamins that make me crave something salty, right? But if I can understand that what I'm really needing is a specific nutrient, then I've got a chance at reforming that bad habit. It's the understanding, right? It's the questioning. It's not just I need something salty so I get the pickle or the chips or the whatever. It's I'm needing something salty because my body's telling me that I don't have something, right? The current state that I'm in is not the state that I need or want to be in. And that gap between it is what gives us the reason to actually take an action. And habits are the things you do automatically, right? They're the processes that just run and you're, eating a piece of chocolate before you even realized you got up and walked to the kitchen. And so it's bringing that consciousness into why does this happen? Why is this doing it? Because you can't fix a bad habit if you don't get down to the root cause.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what I'm taking away from this chapter, Sam, is that you have underlying cravings and you have motives around that. And the way that James talks about it is that you really just want to feel something different. There's something about your current state that you want a feeling, an emotion, something that comes from your thinking and being and doing, that you just want something different. And so our feelings and emotions tell us if we need change, and it still comes from your brain. So there's a section in the chapter that talks about neurologists have discovered that when emotions and feelings are impaired, we lose the ability to make decisions. What that says to me is if you want change in your life, you want a different outcome, you want a different result, you want something different in your life, you have to look at what your motives are, what your cravings are, why you believe those things to be true. And your beliefs all come from thoughts, which either were programmed by somebody else, or they were things that came from your outside environment that you came to believe to be true about yourself. And so how to reprogram your brain towards that is about the association that you make. And so one of the parts I love about this chapter is he talks about how you can just reframe your bad habits by just changing the words that come out of your mouth, and that these thoughts become words and words become life. And so if you said something like, well, today is Thursday, and so today I have to record What's on Your Bookshelf with Sam. There's sort of like a negativity towards that, saying it that way, like I have to do this. But if you change the word have to get to, it reframes it a whole different way. Like today's Thursday and I get to invest an entire hour with Sam talking about these things that are changing our lives together. You don't have to do something. You get to do something. When you wake up in the morning, you don't have to say, I have to make the donuts. You get to make the donuts, or I have to take my kids to school today. No, you get to take your kids to school today. Or, well, I have to go to this job. I can't wait till it's Friday. Instead of saying, wow, I'm so fortunate that I get to do this job Monday through Friday. Even if it feels like it's a lot of hours, you still get to do things that you chose at one time to do. And I often tell clients, to try to think back to a time when you first started your job. How excited were you the day that you found out you got the offer? It's a complete different feeling than for people that feel like they're at the end of their journey with that particular place. But to really dig into the key point of the reality that's around you. What changed for you? What's the reality that changed? And again, if it's a feeling, do you feel like you can't be at that place anymore? Maybe it's that you put your passions to the side and you feel angry or sad because something you really wanted didn't come to pass. Or maybe you really want to grow and you're not being given opportunities. Well, maybe you simply just need to network better, or you need to learn something to elevate your potential and growth. Or maybe you just feel like you're truly just making widgets every day and not making a difference. And that's a choice. You choose to go to that job. You can choose to go to a different job. It's not as easy as just saying go to a different job. I know the economy is hard sometimes, and especially right now, but it's still a choice at the end of the day. You were talking even about some things, Sam, about making the choice for exercise or making the choice on things like finance or making the choice on the way that you think about processing your morning and how you set up your day. So I'm curious from your perspective, how do you make the choice to turn something into the reality that you want?
Yeah. And for me, what I'm utilizing this thing, and I was utilizing this before I read this book, and I didn't realize really what I was doing. It was just, I don't know, in my natural, very positive, overly optimistic outlook in life. But James says that, reframing your habits to highlight their benefits, reframing the situation to highlight their benefits. Maybe this comes, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this comes from the years I spent in customer service and especially in the tech world where like things break, right? Like technology is not perfect. And I got to be the person that people called in and said, my thing is broken. And I would be like, good news, we get to work on this together and we're going to make this happen for you. And I don't know how many horrible situations I've had to like turn into, all right, how are we moving forward? What are we doing with this? But James's tip here is to highlight the benefit of what you get out of it, right? And so the good example he gives is you could say to yourself, I need to go running in the morning, right? Because you're trying to get a running habit going. Instead, you could say, it's time to build endurance and get fast. Right. And so for me, right, like I'm really working right now on my morning routine. What am I doing in the morning that's setting the tone for the day? And what am I doing? Right. Some of those things are hard getting at. I'm not a morning person in general. That's a story I've been telling myself. So I'm trying to become one. And it's hard to get out of bed. It's hard to do that. But it's that reminder that, hey, if you get out of bed, you've got more time. You're going to feel this. You're going to get to this place, right? Instead of writing one sentence, maybe you could write a whole chapter. Or instead of reading, one section, maybe you could get, many pages kind of knocked out on this book you're trying to finish, right? So it's reframing really what the benefits are and thinking about that. And he gives some good examples on like finance, right? So like saving money feels like sacrifice, like I can't do things because I'm trying to save money. But in the reality, it's no, I'm investing in my financial freedom in the future, right? Like, yeah, I'm not doing this thing right now, but I'm not thinking about it that way. It's like anytime you have to say no to dinner with, dinner out instead of cooking something, it's, oh, okay, I get to invest in my financial freedom later. So I'm gonna, really think about that. And sometimes, I think sometimes people are like, oh, that feels a little woo-woo for me, right? Like, it still sucks to do it. And yes, these aren't habits that you want to necessarily do, or you're trying to break habits that are bad. You're really trying to think about them in terms of what it's doing for you or what it can be doing for you. Because again, you're trying to build an identity. You're trying to build yourself into somebody you want to be through these small changes. And so you've got to really reframe that. And the last example that he gives that I really like is pregame jitters, right? Because I'm all about sports analogies and things like that. But, really reframing that into, oh gosh, I'm nervous about this upcoming game, or I'm nervous about this speech I have to give, or I'm nervous about this thing that I have to do. Instead, really understanding like, what is nervousness? Nervousness is your body pumping you through all this extra adrenaline and like flooding you with all the things you need to prepare to do the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, hey, it's not that I'm nervous, it's I'm excited. My body is getting me ready to help me concentrate on the game, to help me, power through this speech. And so really reframing and rethinking of it as, oh, it's not nervous. It's that I understand that nervousness at its core is my body preparing me for something. So, hey, I'm feeling the juice running. I'm feeling this going. And so now I don't have pregame jitters. I got pregame overexcitement. Now I got to figure out how to lean into that and how to utilize that and how to, really become great in these cues.
I think the key to all of it really is to just start. And so when you look at, I'm trying to see on the bookshelf, I have a book that I think is called that. It's called Start, actually. In fact, it is called Start. It's by by John Acuff. He has a book also called Quitter, but there's this book called Start, which really is just talking about how if you want something different in your life, you have to do something about it and you have to just start. And so when I was thinking about what you were sharing between the smoking example and then now between this example, with exercise and finance, if you want to have the benefits that come from having a healthy lifestyle, then you have to start with exercise. Like, it doesn't feel comfortable. It's hard, but it's going to give you the result you want. Saving your money and eating at home, it doesn't feel comfortable, but you have to do that so that you can get to the place where you have comfort. He talks about meditation, and I think that this sometimes you mentioned about woo-woo a minute ago. A lot of times people think it's woo-woo to breathe, but our bodies are fed with water and oxygen. And if you just take the time to breathe into a situation, sometimes you can calm yourself before you have something like a pregame jitter. I loved your analogy with the baseball example, because if pregame jitters were that bad, then the person would never want to play that sport to begin with. But something about the sport is still the motive and the excitement around what they want to do. And he really kind of ends this chapter by talking about things like, if you really want to feel happier in general, well, then find something that makes you happy. If you want to be healthier in general, find something that makes you healthier. If you want to do something that makes you feel more fulfilled, then you need to do fulfilling things in your life. Like, these are common sense principles. And so this is the inversion of the second law of behavior change, which is, if there's something you don't want in life, then you need to make it unattractive so that you won't want it. If you want something in life, then you do make it attractive. In fact, if we just summarize, Sam, this whole second law of making it attractive, how to make it attractive or make it unattractive, let's summarize this chapter, because next time we're going to talk about law number 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that last piece of what you're saying, that's part of probably the summary. So maybe I'll start with that one. But that's creating a motivational ritual. So do something you enjoy immediately before something you're trying to do, right? So if there's something that really makes you happy and you're getting into that happy feeling, do the thing you need to do right before you do something that makes you happy. So the example he gives is like petting your dog makes you super happy, but maybe you're trying to create a habit of like a deep breath, like 3 deep breaths is something that makes you happy, right? So that you can use that as like a tool in your life. So, doing that motivational ritual that helps you kind of lock these two things together is one of the big things from this. So there's that, creating the motivational ritual. There's also joining a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. And there's use temptation bundling. So that's all the way back in the first chapter of this section, is pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do, right? And that's that stacking of habit stacking and then stacking on temptation bundling. So if you want to make something attractive, use temptation bundling, join a culture that is doing what you want to do, and create a motivational ritual that helps you associate some happiness with the thing that you got to do. And then when you're trying to break that bad habit, it's making it unattractive, right? If you want to get a good habit, you make it attractive. If you want to break a bad habit, you make it unattractive. And that's all about that reframing of your mindset and really, kind of understanding why you're doing what you're doing, but then making that, what the benefits of avoiding that bad habit really are for you, right? What does that get you by avoiding that bad habit?
I think I'm definitely going to try that this week. So when I go to the gym, I'm going to say to myself, I get to be here to exercise and make myself happier with this culture of people who want to be healthier and happier. And I'm going to bundle it with something I want to do, which is get healthier, with an action that I need to do, which is get myself on a treadmill. So I think that's going to be the habit that I look at this week. And there's some unattractive things I want to get rid of, which is, before I walk out the door, I probably need to pick up all of the random shoes that are in the hallway.
There you go. That's good.
Oh goodness. Well, Sam, it's always...
I can't believe we're at the end of that law. That's great. Looking forward to law number 3 here next time.
I'm really looking forward to that. Next time, we're going to be talking about how to make it easy, which sounds really, really interesting to me, because so far, some of this feels so hard. So looking forward to joining you again next time.
It makes me think it's going to be hard, right? Like, make it easy sounds hard to me. So yeah, looking forward to it, but woo!
It does. Well, friends, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode. If you are getting value from this, we sure would love to hear from you. Please share a note with us on our LinkedIn page, School of Thoughts. My name's Denise Russo. My friend here, Sam Powell, is the founder and CEO of Lead the Game. We really enjoyed having you with us through this series all the way now through chapter 10, which is law number 2 of Atomic Habits by James Clear. Make sure you go check out this book on either wherever you buy books, I suppose. I don't want to promote just one place to buy a book, but come back again next week where we talk about the third law, making it easy. Thanks for joining us this week for another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf.